Alright, we got that thing on charge, and let it charge up now. Oh, show. What it do, E-World? Chriscrossingwires. We back with another video. We got a few things in for that RZ repair. I'm still waiting on a few other parts, but we'll go ahead and be able to get started on that soon. I did manage to find, if you must have these 300 amp circuit breakers, and you know, I really feel like they're really not necessary, but what they are good for, if you have to disconnect and reconnect your battery on a regular basis, it is good to have a breaker so that you can open it and attach your battery without getting that high voltage spark. You know, you get a loud pop when you connect your battery, and what that is after all the power has drained out of your controller, there's an initial surge when you connect your battery right back, and it's always going to be a pop sound. So, you know, if you got a breaker that eliminates that pop, that's really what they were put in a lot of bikes to do. That pop kind of scares people. Anyway, if you have a BMS where you can switch it off, you don't need the breaker, because when you switch the BMS off, it cuts power. So anyway, trying to find some of those that are decent current ratings is a little difficult sometimes. We got a step down, some QS8s, which is fine for the amount of power that RZ is running. It's running a stock controller, which is 80 amps. As I told you guys in another video, the person that sold this bike to my buddy sold it to him with the wrong charger. They gave him a 60 volt charger for a 72 volt pack. So he was wondering why he didn't get good range, and the green light always stayed on when he connected this charger, obviously, because that battery was sitting at nominal voltage, which is higher than 69 volts of a 60 volt charger. So we got an 8 amp 72 volt charger for that. This is another pack that I'm working on. We got antenna BMS on it, so we're going to use this display. The person wants to mount the display on their bike, so we just got to finish wrapping that pack up, and that's it. Let's see what else we got going on, man. I didn't get to finish my battery yet, but I'm going to be doing that really soon. What I want to talk about today is BMSs, because see, there's a lot of misconception when it comes to BMSs, and you know, I just want to get some additional facts out. Don't get me wrong, BMSs are great for people that have not a lot of knowledge about batteries or e-bikes or anything. It's definitely should be mandatory for those guys, because they don't really know how to monitor their battery voltages, battery temperatures, controller temperatures, and stuff like that. So a BMS would aid them in that. However, I made a little short video the other day saying that when it comes to my high power builds, I always run bypass on the discharge side, and here's why. Let me turn this down.
I might meet myself.
My bag. Okay, first of all, let me let you take a look at a BMS. This is a passive BMS. This is not an active BMS. The difference being an active BMS circuitry is just that. It uses power to monitor all of those things that I just mentioned a little while ago, and it will supposedly keep you from overcharging your pack when your pack gets up to full charge voltage, if your charger doesn't stop it, which normally chargers do. If you got a 72 volt charger, its maximum voltage output is 84.4. So when your battery voltage reaches 84.4, the charger alone will shut off. Okay, it will shut down and discontinue charging. However, a charger being an electronic device, everything can fail. So for whatever reason, if voltage regulator or something like that blew in your charger and the charger just ran up to a sky high voltage and attempted to overcharge your pack, after it reached 84.4, it continued to charge, the BMS is supposed to shut it off. Okay, now I say suppose because I have conducted experiments with passive BMSs, and I have a 100 volt power supply over there, right down there. It's variable. I can dial it up to 100 volts, and I've experimented with dialing the voltage up past 84.4 to see if it was shut off charging, and it did not. Therefore, if I was charging a pack with a 100 volt charger and plugged it up to a 72 volt battery at 100 volts, it would go up to 84.4. When the battery reached 84.4, it would continue to go past that. And what happens is, cells, when they get way beyond their full charge voltage, just like a gas tank you're putting gas in, or let's say a water balloon. If you're putting water in a balloon, it's getting to its maximum volume. When it gets beyond that volume, that balloon is going to burst. Same thing with a battery. When that amount of energy that's stored in that battery exceeds the capacity, battery will start to heat up. It will swell up. It will also start getting hot. The higher the voltage gets, it will get to such a high temperature that that battery will go into thermal runaway and it will explode. They also start expanding. So if you have batteries in a plastic pack and they're overcharging, if you was in the area, you would hear that plastic cracking as those batteries swelled up. All right, now let's talk about different BMSs. Like I said, there's passive, there's active, there's also smart BMSs, and the reason why they call them smart is because you're able to connect to them via Bluetooth, and it gives you telemetry as far as voltage, the different cell stages, and the voltage at each stage, and supposedly it's supposed to balance your pack. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the cell balancing is just a lot of smoke and mirrors. As far as I'm concerned, it sounds good, but do these things actually balance your batteries? Yes, they can. However, if you're a person that rides your bike every day, a BMS is never going to balance that pack. For one, the way that a BMS, an active BMS, like this one over here, the way it balances a battery, it has balance leads. All of the balance leads go to each stage of your pack, okay? And it reads the voltage at each stage. Now, if a battery is sitting, let's say a battery is sitting in different stages, we're at different voltages. What the BMS is going to do is bleed off voltage from one stage that has a higher voltage to stages that have lower voltages. Okay, and if you ever seen BMS wires, this is what they look like. They're very small gauge balance wires. So therefore, these balance wires can't carry a lot of current. Now, you know, if you have a large 60, that's a 67 amp hour. If I was to charge a 67 amp hour battery with a 5 amp charger, sorry for that noise, guys, got new neighbors, but if I was to charge that battery with a 5 amp charger and it was completely flat, it would take a long time to charge that pack at 5 amps. Okay, now these balance leads and these active BMSs can only send like 50 milliamps, sometimes less than that, 25 milliamps worth of current. You know how long it will take? This is a small pack, 6P. If the first and second stage voltage was different from the third and fourth stage voltage, it would attempt to drain. If one was higher, it would attempt to drain off from the higher stage to the lower stage through these balance leads. At 25 and 50 milliamps, that would take forever, even with a 6P pack. 6P being 24 amp hour roughly. All right, so that pack would basically have to be sitting for 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks to actually balance with the little small amount of driblets of current that goes through these things. So all that balance and stuff is hoopla, because you ride your bike every day. Before this BMS would even start to change voltages in different stages, you're going to ride your bike and pull current through that entire pack, which is going to offset everything this BMS was trying to do. All right, and like I said, when you store your pack up for the winter, if you don't ride during the winter, and when you put your pack up, different stages, the voltage were different. Yeah, if it's sitting for 2 or 3 months, it might balance that pack, because balancing means it's balancing the stages. It's not balancing individual cells. Okay, the cells balance themselves basically by being in parallel. That physical connection alone will balance the cells. Even with the pack, if you have a brand new pack with all brand new matched cells, all of those cells are going to have the exact same capacity, have the exact same amount of cycles on them, and basically perform at the same level. All right, so when you use that pack and draw current through it, let's say you got a controller that's drawing 100 amps from that pack. As you pull current through that entire pack, all of those cells will see the same voltage. Therefore, they will all be even. If you look at your BMS and look at the voltages on them, they will all be very close, if not exactly on. Okay, now if there's damage to one of these stages, you know, from bad welds, or if there happens to be a cell that fails, okay, you will see that in your telemetry, that the 3S stage voltage is 3.5, while the rest of the packs are, rest of the stages are at 4.2. Okay, so that BMS makes it easy for someone that does repairs to go straight to the group of cells where the issue is. But do they need that? No. Do you need that if you know how to, monitor your pack? No, you don't. All right, if one of those stages has a fault, your total voltage is 84.4. If you ride your bike every day, charge your bike every day, every day it's charging up to the same exact voltage, 84.4. If one of those days you come out there and your charger is saying the green light is on, but when you look at your total voltage, it's no longer 84.4, it's at 82.3. You know there's an issue. You may not know at which stage the issue is, but you definitely know there's an issue. And then at that point, if you open up your pack, you could go through with the meter, measure the voltages at each stage, and determine which stage has the issue. You know, the BMS is just doing that diagnostic for you. So yeah, it's diagnosing. However, it cannot repair, regardless as to this BMS sees an issue in one of those stages. It cannot repair the issue. Okay. Now, like I said, it will attempt to balance different offset voltages over long periods of time. But if there's a broken connection, bad cells, whatever, it can't magically repair that fault. Okay. Just make you aware of it. So, as far as telemetry wise, yeah, that's great. Is it necessary? No. Because as I said, you can do that with just your voltmeter. Now, the most important thing you should be looking at when you're riding is your voltages, how far your battery may sag down under load, and you should be able to monitor battery temperatures. So that's one good thing about BMSs, especially like this antenna BMS. It comes with temperature sensors, thermistors. You get like 3 or 4 of them, and you can place those in different sections of your pack to monitor the pack temperature. That's the most important thing you should be monitoring at all times. If your pack is overheating in a certain area, there could be an issue. Now, understand that in the summertime, it's already 90 degrees out. So if you're riding very hard, pulling a lot of current through your cells, they're going to tend to heat up. Now, another good thing a BMS can do is monitor the discharge side. For someone, and the only time that's beneficial is if someone is running a high power controller on a pack that's not capable of delivering those amps. And what I mean by that is there are guys that get BAC 4000s on a Suron and run that controller off of the stock battery, with the stock battery having cells in it that may only be 5 or 10 amp cells, and that actual pack can only produce 150, 200 amps. But they got a BAC 4000 with the DC line amps turned up to 200-300 amps, and they got everything maxed out on a 150 amp pack. Now, if you're pulling 300 amps on a 150 amp pack, you're working those cells a lot harder than they should be. So therefore, when you do that, cells are going to run hot. You can send them into thermal runaway by overworking them. When you see bikes catching on fire on group rides, it's because somebody is running a high power controller on a stock battery that's been bypassed, so BMS is not shutting it down because you pulling 300 amps on a 150 amp battery, and you're doing a group ride where you're haul-assing for that entire 30 miles. You might not even make it that 30 miles. If you're doing max high speed for 15 miles straight non-stop in the heat of the day on a stock pack, yeah, something bad's going to happen. So therefore, a BMS that's shutting off the discharge in that case is a good thing. All right. Now, that's if it does what it's supposed to do. Now, back to another point I want to make about this balancing. That smoke and mirrors of the balancing. A lot of smart BMSs don't balance packs. As I said, they just read those cell voltages. You actually have to have what's called an active BMS. Only an active BMS can actually balance cells, but still it's at minimum amounts of current, and it takes a long amount of time. Now, someone had asked me earlier, because I made this little video about saying that on my discharge, because I run high power, I run bypass, and they asked me why, and I explained to them that even a BMS that's supposedly rated for 500 amps is a bottleneck. You know, if you look at this BMS right here, when you run a BMS on your pack, the negative side goes through the BMS. Okay, so you got your B minus and your C minus over here. So one side of your negative wire goes on one side, and the other side goes to the output of your battery, going to your controller. So that current is actually running through, see those little circuit boards in there? That current is going through those circuit boards. All right, now even though those circuit boards have a nice little copper bus bar in there, we're still talking about 500 amps going through a little circuit board with a nice little thick piece of copper, when at the same time you're running 500 amps through some 0 gauge wire or some 4 gauge, whatever, heavy gauge wire. You're defeating the purpose of putting heavy gauge wire on your battery if you're going to introduce a bottleneck. High current may flow through there, but it's going to be flowing through there with high resistance. This 0 gauge wire has a very low resistance, okay, because it's heavy gauge. That circuit board in there is not going to have the same resistance as that 0 gauge. All right, so it's going to be a bottleneck, just like a circuit breaker. Circuit breaker is going to be a bottleneck. If you put a fuse in line, even though it's a 500 amp fuse, it's going through a little filament in the fuse. That's going to be a bottleneck. That little filament is going to have a different resistance than that 0 gauge wire. Anytime you have a different resistance at certain point, that is going to cause voltage sag. Those guys on those Serons running high power controllers and supposedly custom packs, they're running custom packs that can deliver 400 and 500 amps. On Serons, they come with a 100 amp or 150 amp circuit breaker. Okay, why would you attempt to pull 300 or 400 amps through a supposedly 150 amp circuit breaker? Now, although some of those circuit breakers don't trip and allow current to flow through there, that current is only squeezing through those breakers at a very high resistance, because whatever the metal connections they're using in there, sometimes it's coiled white wire, sometimes it's little blades. I mean, it cannot handle the same amount of current flow as those power wires at the same resistance. So that's going to be a bottleneck, you know. And as again, bottlenecks cause voltage sag. It, you know, there's no doubt about that. It's proven fact. Okay, even a connector that's not designed to carry the same amount of amps as the battery can produce, or the wires, is going to be a bottleneck. All right, you're going to get voltage sag from any parts of your power system that can't carry the power at a low resistance. All right, now when I was running my BAC 8000 through the discharge side of the BMS, I was getting voltage sag. If my battery was fully charged at 84 volts, if I was pulling 400 amps through that BMS, the voltage would sag from 84 all the way down to 72. Okay, because of that bottleneck. I build my batteries to distribute high current. I use copper. I use 0.3 millimeters, sometimes 0.5 copper in those packs. That is to carry high current. All right. Nowhere in the world, if I'm trying to run at 400 or 500 amps, am I going to be running that through the BMS? Not me. Now, when I build a pack for a customer or anybody else, I'm going to put all those safety measures on there because they're not me. But I know how to monitor and manage my pack better than my BMS. This smart BMS is not smarter than me. You know, it's definitely going to be smarter than those that aren't knowledgeable about electronics or any high current applications. So you would need that. But you know, I'm not going to allow this BMS to be smarter than me. I know when to hold and I know when to fold, just, you know, by looking at the basic information that I need: my total voltage, my pack temperature, and my output power. That's all I need. So you know, like I said, a lot of people put a little too much faith in BMSs because they're electronics. They can fail just as well, and a failed BMS is not going to save you. So don't charge at nighttime thinking because you got a BMS that you're all good. You should never be charging when you sleep or when you're not home, period. Do not put that much faith in a piece of cheap electronics, which a lot of these BMSs are. A lot of stuff, most e-bike stuff comes from China. And, you know, at the end of the day, they make a lot of inexpensive components. Now, you can buy different controllers and stuff here in the United States, and the build quality is much better. You're going to pay a whole lot more for that, though. So when people wonder why certain controllers are $1,500, some are $2,000, and then you got a far driver that's supposed to be the same watts as that, and you can get that one for $400 or $500. It's all about the build quality. And I mean, at the end of the day, people like far drivers. Not saying anything bad about them, but between the VESC and the far driver, the build quality is significantly different. So is the software, but mainly the hardware. You know, you will notice a difference. Make no mistake about it. Let's see, what else can I say about these BMSs? I've had lots of videos about BMSs and what they do, what they can and what they can't do. I recently saw where someone that's knowledgeable about batteries, either they made a mistake when they said what they said, or they didn't even know themselves, but they had stated that let's say out of this pack, if these last 4 stages had an issue, they said that the BMS could adjust the amount of output power of the other stages. That is untrue. That is untrue. No way a BMS can regulate the amount of power coming from different stages if it doesn't have an actual connection for those different stages. Each one of these stages would actually have to have their own power wire coming from them, going through the BMS, coming out of the BMS, meeting at a junction for the full total voltage. They don't have that. This power wire coming out of this pack is for the total pack power. Okay, and that total pack power goes through the BMS, not individually for each stage. All right, there's no way a BMS can regulate different stages output power when they are all connected together through one line. All right, this BMS would have to have 20 heavy gauge wires on it for each output stage. When it doesn't, all a BMS has is balance leads on the input side. On the input side, the discharge side is just one line, the output power running through the BMS, the total power. It cannot regulate individual stages output. Can't do that. All right, so while there are people that are quite knowledgeable about batteries and everything, there is a difference between those that have formal education in electronics and those that have good skills and good knowledge because they have done something over and over, or have done it so long that they become good at it. But however, those that have formal educations have learned to they know the knowledge and the theory as to why everything works. There's a difference between mechanics that can diagnose cars and parts replacers. Parts replacers have a general idea about what may be wrong with the car, so they start changing parts in this specific area. When someone that's fully knowledgeable about that car, you give them the symptoms, they can tell you exactly what part. They don't just randomly guess and start swapping out parts hoping that they get the right one. All right, there are people that no, there are no gatekeepers when it comes to knowledge. You know what I'm saying? Knowledge is available to everyone. The only being that knows everything about everything is the Almighty Creator himself. Other than that, don't ever think that one person holds all the knowledge to everything. That's bullshit. I don't care if they build batteries for a living. I don't care if they have a battery company. There are other battery companies. There are other people that can do the same thing. There are other people that have more knowledge. Anyway, that's it. I'll holler at y'all later. But I'm not trying to say anything bad about any particular battery company. The ones that are out there doing big business, they are great at what they do. I'm going to repeat that. They are great at what they do. And them compared to someone that knows nothing, obviously they're e-bike God. All right? But understand that there are other e-bike gods as well. Okay? So, you know, there's not just one e-bike God. There's only one creator of everything God. But all the little gods, small g, whole bunch of them. All right, y'all, take it easy. Take care. Chriscrossingwires. I'm up out of here. Peace. And do know that when I speak about these things, I'm speaking because not only have I been into electronics for a long time in different fields, and I have a lot of I have a lot of background, and from that I also have a formal education in electronics as well. So, you know, I have experience, work experience, and I have technical theory behind that. You know, some people, like I said, can repair and fix stuff because of their experience, and while other people can do the same, but understand and know how things work. Knowing how things work and why they work is different. You know, those guys that, you know, are capable, have good skills, they're not going to be able to calculate inductive reactance or capacitive reactance, or calculate the impedance of an entire circuit. Do those mathematical calculations. Everything can be calculated when it comes to electronics. Everything. There are formulas for everything. All right, y'all, I'm out of here. Deuces.